StraightallDay.com.
To the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. What's that, Dre? That is a go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we are going into part 2 of 2 in this 2-part series on why you are thinking too small. Yesterday when I was recording the first part of this series, I wasn't even looking at my next episode notes, didn't even realize this was a 2-part series that I had already planned ahead of time. So you're getting a 2-parter that I didn't even announce was a 2-parter, but either way, you're going to get massive game today, no matter whether I announce it or not. Every day you get massive game here on this show. So, but before we get into this, let me remind everybody that every day I send out a text message for free to everybody who's in my text community. You want to receive this message. It is guaranteed to keep you focused, or have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. I call it the Daily Motivation. If you would like to receive a message called the Daily Motivation straight from me, you already listened to our podcast by me, so why not get a Daily Motivation text message from me? You might as well just get everything. Just get the full buffet of everything you get at Work on Your Game University. You get in the show. Next is to get the Daily Motivation. Text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. Every day, starting tomorrow when I send out the Daily Motivation. Since you are a member of my text community, you will be receiving that message. Third, here's another thing you can do to get the full buffet. I mean, all y'all been to a buffet before, right? When you're at a buffet, you usually end up eating more food than you normally would eat simply because it's available, right? So here at Work on Your Game, the good thing about the buffet we got here at Work on Your Game is that it's not going to make you obese or lead to heart disease. This is actually going to make you better and make your performance and your life exist at a higher level than it is right now. That's what it'll help you do. So go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. At Work on Your Game University, this is where the only place where you can sign up to work with me directly. I get people who reach out to me often and say, Dre, is it possible that I could just reach out to you every now and then and just ask you a question? Or reach out to you every now and then and just have a conversation and you can give me some guidance and some help and some advice on what I'm working on. Or if I could just ask you some questions about what I have going on and you can take a look at what I'm doing and tell me how I can do it better. The answer is, of course, there is a place you can do that. It's all at Work on Your Game University. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do you even one better than that. First of all, you're going to get all the frameworks laid out for what you actually need in your business, which may be different than what you think you need. All of that is part of your membership as a member of Work on Your Game University. Secondly, some of the questions that you have, some of the challenges that you have are not actually the challenges that you need to be solving. You may be solving for the wrong outcome. Any of you remember algebra class where you would get a problem in the math book and it would say solve for X. And if you got that problem wrong, it's because you solved it the wrong way. You went about it with the wrong process. And Work on Your Game University, sometimes, and this actually every time I work with somebody, usually they have a challenge that is not actually the real challenge. So they're solving for the wrong X. And even if you get it right, you solve the wrong problem. So at Work on Your Game University, I'm going to show you how, all right, you're trying to solve this problem, but actually what we need to solve is this problem over here. Because if we solve this problem over here, the other 17 problems you have won't even matter anymore. Let's just solve this one right here and that'll take care of everything else. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. I'll show you what it is, how to do it, and I'll give you a framework for doing it over and over again so you can take it with you moving forward and you can do it for yourself more in life after you learn it from me. You're going to get all of that and more, and you'll have direct access to me. I mean, what could be better than that? All of that is at workonyourgameuniversity.com. So with all of that said, and by the way, the links to everything that you've heard me mention here, whether it's the advertisements, the phone number, the university, all that stuff, any episodes that I reference, all of that are down below in the description to this episode. So if you're watching this on video, look in the description. All those links are down there. If you're listening to this on the audio apps like SoundCloud, Spotify, or Apple, scroll down to the description. Every link that I mentioned is down in the show notes. If you notice that one is not there, just send me a message. Text me at 305-384-6894. Let me know the link is not there, and we'll make sure that is in there consistently. So all that said, let's get into today's topic. We're picking up on point number 4. The topic again is why you are thinking too small. Number 4, you are being realistic. And when I say realistic, imagine air quotes there. If you're watching on video, I'm not doing air quotes, but I do mean air quotes around the word realistic. While the word realistic is actually, it's a neutral word. The word itself is neutral. I mean, words are not really, in my opinion, every word is objective, it's neutral, but people make words feel differently based on how they decide to take them. So the definition of realistic is having or showing a sensible and practical idea of what can be achieved or expected. That's a fine definition. Challenge with the definition is, I'm not saying the definition is wrong, but the challenge is these two words, sensible and practical, and also what can be achieved. These three terms are very, very, very relative. What I consider sensible, you may not consider sensible. I consider it sensible that if I go run 7 miles outside, I can do so at a 7-minute per mile pace. That's sensible for me. But if you don't even like running and you never run outside, you wouldn't even run a mile, let alone 7 miles, let alone in Miami humidity, that's not sensible for you. So which one is realistic? Well, we're both right. Your reality is yours, my reality is mine. Practical, same thing. What can be achieved? Same thing. If you're a person who makes $500,000 a year or more, it is practical for you to expect to make $500,000 a year this year, next year, and the year after that. But if you're a person who's never made more than $50,000 a year, is that practical for you to say you will make $500,000 next year? Is it practical? No, because you haven't done it before, unless you have, for whatever reason, you have some type of mechanism that is going to 10x or more your output based on what you've done up to this point. Now, it doesn't mean it's possible. Yes. Now, notice the difference between practical and possible. All right, so be careful with the words here. So realistic is relative. What's realistic for one person is completely unrealistic for the next person. And that's why I put the word realistic in air quotes, because we all have different versions of what's realistic for each of us, depending on who we are, where we've been, our experiences, and our capabilities. So realistic is a neutral word, and it can be used in positive ways, depending on the context. But usually in today's society, you tell me if you agree or disagree with this, when someone says they are being realistic, that usually means they are tamping down their ambitions and making their goals smaller, or they're being advised to do so. A kid goes to school and they're in the 3rd grade. Teacher says, everybody do an experiment, write down what you want to be for a living. And some kid says, well, I want to be an NFL player, I want to be a basketball player, I want to be president of the United States. And the teacher says, that's unrealistic, come up with a better one. Any of you who follows those sports, or let's just say sports, you often hear this story from some athlete every year. There's some athlete who says, well, when I was in this grade, I told the class I wanted to be whatever they become, football player, basketball player, whatever. And the teacher said, that's unrealistic. You're never going to do that. You'll never achieve that. That's crazy. Or they sent them home, or they gave them a failing grade on the test, and the mom got mad at the teacher and this and that. And then they look back on it 20 years later and say, hi, teacher, I proved you wrong. So this is the reason I'm bringing all that up, is to say, many times when people use the term realistic in today's world, they usually mean to take whatever ambitions you have and lower them. And this is why I put realistic in quotation marks, because many of you think small because you are telling yourself you need to be more realistic. People use this word when they're telling themselves that they may be thinking too high in the sky and they need to bring themselves down a notch or two. You're doing this to yourself. This is not the world doing it to you. I'm not talking about the school teacher. I'm talking about you doing it to yourself, looking in the mirror and telling yourself, well, that goal is too big. Let me make it a little bit smaller so it better fits what I think I'm capable of. That is a form of self-sabotage. It's a sign of a lack of confidence. And this is you being quote unquote realistic. This is the kind of thinking that keeps people average, keeps them in their comfort zones, and keeps them never expanding their horizons beyond the environment that they've been placed in. This is why I can so confidently assert that most people never change. Right? You hear me say that all the time. This is one of the reasons why. I always give you a bunch of reasons why people never change. This is another one. Add this to the list of why people never change. I need to do a whole episode series on why people don't change. Actually, I'm going to, now that I'm saying this. So if you're watching this on video, you can see me right now. I'm actually going into my way I record these episodes, or the way I have the topics for these episodes, is I write down the ideas for these. So it's not like I just turn on the mic. I wish I could tell you that I just turn on the mic and just randomly start talking and it all comes out perfect. No, I actually plan out these topics and then I flesh out the points that I'm going to share. Then I talk extemporaneously, guided by my notes, aided by my notes when I record these. So I just wrote down why people never change. I'm gonna do a whole series on that. It's probably gonna be multiple episodes. Actually, I guarantee you it'll be multiple episodes. Most people think, back to my point here, most people think that they are doing the right thing by being as realistic as possible. This is one of the worst things you can do. The social version of realistic is one of the worst things you can do for your future success. Why? Because it's telling you to slow down, do less, and think less of yourself, and hold yourself back from what you could do, and thusly don't push yourself, stay in your comfort zone. And the reason why many people go along with this, as bad as I'm making it sound, the reason many people go along with this is because being realistic, quote unquote, allows you to stay in your comfort zone, and it's comfortable in the comfort zone. It's uncomfortable to get out of the comfort zone, being, I guess, what you would call unrealistic based on the example that we're using here in this context. The reason why many people are comfortable staying quote unquote realistic is because it feels good. It is safe. It is known. You're not rocking the boat. You don't have to deal with any discomfort by being realistic. This is the reason why many people default to it. And it's the reason why reality, quote unquote, again, I'm using quote unquote here with this form of reality. This is how reality holds many people back in life. Point number 5. Today's topic, once again, is why you are thinking too small. Number 5, you are in your comfort zone and it's hard to get out. I mean, put it right there. Many of these points I'm sharing here today would go right into this series on why people never change, but I'll make sure I don't repeat myself at least too much when I get to that part, when I get to those episodes. You are in your comfort zone and it's hard to get out. This is why people think small. It is very difficult to get out of the comfort zone. You know why it's difficult to get out of the comfort zone? Because it's comfortable. All right. Any of you live in a cold climate? I do not. I live in South Florida. It can be cold though. Sometimes when the AC is turned up too much. I'm not a big fan of. I don't use too much air conditioning, honestly. But sometimes, maybe when I have these suits on, sometimes I need it. But most of the time, I don't keep the AC too cold. Anyway, let me not even get into that. So there's a reason why the comfort zone is called the comfort zone. It's comfortable. All right. That's why it's called the comfort zone, because it's comfortable. Many of us spend most of our lives perpetually in the comfort zone because it is comfortable, not because we don't want to succeed, not because we don't want to get better, advance, go further, make more money, etc., reach our full potential, all the cliche things that we like to say. The reason why we do not grow in life is because it is comfortable to not grow. Growth is uncomfortable. It feels good to be in the comfort zone. You're familiar with everything that could possibly happen in the comfort zone, and you're rarely challenged when you're in your comfort zone, and you can continue doing whatever you've been doing with impunity without being interrupted for the most part. You don't get interrupted when you're in your comfort zone. Nothing that happens to you within your comfort zone bothers you. Like right now, if I'm in my comfort zone, there's nothing that can happen. Anything that's comfortable for me does not bother me. So if I go outside tomorrow to run and it's 75 degrees and humid, it doesn't bother me because I'm used to it. All right, that's part of my comfort zone. I'm used to doing it. I've done it so many times. I go to the boxing gym tomorrow and there's a bunch of people in there hitting the punching bags and sweating all over the place, and there's girls in there, and some people will go to the gym like that and they'll be intimidated because they don't work out ever. It doesn't bother me because I'm used to it. I'm used to that environment. Those are comfortable for me. But for other people, those may be very uncomfortable. And there are other environments where I would be completely uncomfortable. Let's say you put me in maybe not completely uncomfortable, but somewhat. Let's say you put me in a tennis center and everybody's playing tennis one-on-one. And you put me on a tennis court with somebody who looks like they play at least on a regular basis, and I'm going to play against them. I will be uncomfortable, not emotionally uncomfortable. I already expect to get my ass kicked in that tennis match, and I'm going to laugh at myself about it, but I'm going to be uncomfortable when it comes to like actually hitting the ball and serving and returning the shots that come from the other player, because I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable in that space, so I don't do it. So the comfort zone is what you are used to. And the reason people stay in the comfort zone is because things that you're used to are comfortable and easy for you. They're convenient for you, and you never feel out of sorts when you're doing those things. And it's easier to do that than it is to push yourself outside of that circle. This is why the coaching and consulting industries exist, because our jobs is to help you do things that you want to do, that will be uncomfortable, that cause you to resist doing them. Our job is to help kind of push you a little bit or a lot to go do those things anyway, and give you the emotional, mental, physical tools necessary to do those things anyway. And that's what I do here I do this here on the show. I give you a sample of it every day here on the show. You get a little bit more sample of it with my daily motivation text, and then you get the full buffet in Work on Your Game University. Small, everybody, when I say thinking too small, small is relative. So here, what I'm referring to is the bigger thinking that you're not doing. The thinking that you're not doing, because there's a bigger level, there's a higher level for all of us. All right, for any one of us, no matter what you're doing, there is a level out there that's higher than where you're at, that is 10 times higher than where you're at. You may not be consciously aware of it or thinking about it consistently. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. The question is, are you willing to get emotionally and mentally uncomfortable in order to get there? Because that's exactly what you're going to have to do. You may have to get uncomfortable in other ways as well. You may have to get financially uncomfortable. You may have to get socially uncomfortable. You may have to get physically uncomfortable to grow in the areas where you want to grow. Usually the areas in which you want to grow, that's the first place you got to get uncomfortable. You want to make more money, you might have to do some things financially that make you uncomfortable. You want to get in better physical shape, you might have to do some things physically that make you uncomfortable. If you want to improve your mental game, you're going to have to do some things mentally that make you uncomfortable. If you want to expand your social circle, you may have to do some things socially that make you uncomfortable. But as long as you stay in the game and you have the right teaching and guidance, you will stay in the game. And the thing that made you uncomfortable 3 months ago is now a normal thing for you. That is called expansion, is also known as growth. Almost all of you say you want expansion and growth. My question is, since I believe you, what are you willing to get? What are you willing to do to get uncomfortable, and how long are you willing to stay uncomfortable in order for that growth to actually occur? Point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is why you are thinking too small. Number 6, short-term thinking. Doing big things. Again, speaking relatively, big is relative. It usually requires a longer time frame and a wider time perspective. Bigger things require longer time frames and wider time perspectives. As a general rule, the more successful the individual, the further into the future they consider the ramifications of their actions. Does everybody understand what that means? The more successful the person, the further into the future they consider the ramifications of their actions. In other words, successful people, and again, I'm using this term relatively, but you all get the spirit of what I'm saying. Successful people prefer, and they are accustomed to, they are comfortable with what we call delayed gratification, allowing time between their inputs and the resulting outputs. That is also known as delayed gratification. Whereas unsuccessful people, or less successful people, let's not call them unsuccessful, let's just call them less successful people, they are more into instant gratification. They need immediate results from their actions. Usually, the longer you allow your actions, as long as they're positive inputs, the longer you allow those inputs to marinate, let's say to bake in the oven, usually the better results you end up getting. Make sense what I'm saying here? The more successful the person considers further into the future. In other words, they're thinking, all right, I'm going to do this work now, but it's okay. I may not get the payback for this for 5 years, but that's all right. Whereas the less successful person needs the payback in 5 minutes, and if they don't get it, they're not willing to do the work. This is why many people lack consistency, because consistency usually leads to long-term results instead of just a short-term turnaround reaction from the universe based on what it is that you did. Successful people plan ahead based on what they're doing. Their actions are planned into the future. You can tell they're thinking about the future, not just the present. Usually, the more successful the person, they're thinking further into the future, because by nature, the things that they do require more resources to produce more resources. Small thinkers are usually only thinking about what they can get now, again, also known as instant gratification. This is the concept of time perspective, which I talked about in episode 777, if you haven't heard about that, time perspective. Think further into the future to be a more successful individual. Big thinkers are willing to delay gratification because they know the gratification will be worth it in the future, and they're willing to give up some of their time now with effort in order to get the results in the future, even if it's someone other than themselves, maybe their kids, their heirs, who get the benefit from the work that they're doing right now. That is our responsibility as human beings. Any of you, especially those of you who are parents, their responsibility is to do some things that you may not benefit from, but the people who follow behind you will benefit from. That is delayed gratification in a nutshell. And if you don't have kids right now, you still are delaying gratification for your future self, because all you plan on being alive in the future, right? Whatever the future is to you, then you need to do some things now that your future self will thank you for rather than being mad at you for. That's a good one right there. Do some things that your future self will thank you for rather than being mad at you for. Are you going to leave your future self an inheritance or a bill? Or maybe an invoice, maybe might be the better way of saying it. That's a question you should be asking yourself. Let's recap the class. We'll end it right on that point. We are on part 2 of 2 on why you are thinking too small. Number 4, being quote unquote realistic. The realistic is a neutral word, but most of the time people use it in a negative way to say take your ambitions and make them smaller. Many people have adopted this idea of what the word realistic means, and thusly, anytime they get a big idea, they tell themselves to be realistic and thus tamp down their own expectations and their own beliefs and what they are capable of doing. Combined with the things we talked about in yesterday's episode, this is a formula for averageness that many people stick to their entire lives. Number 5, you are in your comfort zone and it's very difficult to get out of it. There is a reason why it's called the comfort zone, because it is very comfortable there. It feels good in the comfort zone. You are familiar with everything that happens in the comfort zone. You are never challenged, rarely challenged when you are there. And this is why many people stay there and they don't even realize that they're there, because it's so comfortable you don't even notice. It's like being on vacation. Number 6, short-term thinking. Doing big things usually requires a longer time frame and a wider time perspective. The more successful an individual, the more they are willing to delay gratification. Are you willing to delay gratification and do work now that is going to pay you back in the more distant future than the short-term instant gratification stuff that many less successful and average individuals usually default to? That's an open question that I don't need you to answer to me, but you do need to answer to yourself. And as you come up with the answer, here's 2 things I want you to do. Number 1, text me. Let me know what your answer was, and also let me know you want to get the daily motivation message that I send out every morning by texting me at my number 305-384-6894. And number 2, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Join Work on Your Game University so you can work with me directly, get directly coached by me, and get answers from me about the challenges that you have, get better quality questions than the ones that you may even have right now, so that you can actually have the mindset, the strategies, the systems, and the accountability for you to maximize your potential, squeeze all the juice out of your orange, personally and professionally, with my direct help. That is all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.